guys, in this tutorial I'm going to go through what we have introduced in the last class, which is layered material and layered texture. I have a very simple setup: a cube, a ground, and a very sun sky. I'm going to change my render, my viewport render, into vray RT so we can see the render result in real time. I'm also going to go to panels. Here on my outliner, I'm going to change that into a node editor so I can start editing my material here. The first thing I'm going to do is create a material for my cube. So create a vray material and drag my vray material to the cube. Now load a texture. This texture will be a wood texture. Open it. Now the first thing you see here is this result is kind of like overexposed. Now the reason for that is not because the light is too bright or anything else. You see the texture looks fine, it's not that bright, right? The reason for that is because this texture is a 8-bit JPEG. So actually is previously gamma corrected or gamma shifted to make it view properly on our monitor, because our monitor is not linear. Now you have to make it back, because in Maya everything is linear, so you have to go to attributes, vary, and check texture input gamma to correct it back to make everything linear. I'm going to refresh my render. Now you see the final result is much better, right? And it's almost the same color as what we're seeing here from the file. You can press V to toggle this. Great. Now I'm going to create another texture. So type in File, Texture. Now this time I'm going to load a heavy texture. It's a JPEG. Again, I have to change that, put in a texture input gamma to make things corrected. Okay, now if you drag this to the diffuse color, now you see the heavy texture is looking like this. Now I'm going to combine those two textures together. So press tab again, and then type in layer texture. Now layer texture behaves just like layers in Photoshop. You can have multiple textures combined together, or layers of textures combined together. Now I'm going to select it and drag my wood texture to the list, and also my heavy texture, middle mouse drag to put them there. The first one, this green one, is the default texture. You don't need it, so just close it. Okay. Now let me just drag my layer texture into the diffuse color of my material. Now you see the result is actually only showing my wood. The reason for that is if you press 3 to open layer texture and open the inputs, you see you have two inputs. The first input is the wood and the second one is the heavy, and you see the order is the first one, our wood, is actually on top of our array. So the layers here works just as Photoshop, so my wood is actually blocking everything, so my array is not showing up. You can easily change their order by using middle mouse drag to drag those files around. I'm just going to drag my wood underneath my array. You see now my array is showing up. Now the problem here now is, how can I make the array transparent? Make the wall transparent and to show my wood. Now if you open the inputs, you can see not only it has color but also have alpha. Okay, I'm going to create another file node, and I'm going to load a alpha. That's my array alpha. Now this alpha is created using Photoshop from the original texture, because it's very easy to create a black and white texture based on this, because you have very clean edges and differentiations between the array and the wall behind it. So it's very easy to create this. So I'm not going to go through this. I'm just going to use it as an alpha, as we all know that this is an RGB. All I need is either one of those channels as alphas. I'm just going to drag my out color R as alpha. Okay. Now you see the result is like that, which is, not right. The reason for that is this alpha is actually for the average, and not for the wall. So I have to change that by introducing another node. I'm just going to just want to introduce you more node before by using this method. You see, I'm going to invert it, so you just need to have a reverse node. Reverses the color, make white black and make black white. I'm going to drag it into input, our color into input, okay, and then the result output. I just need to use one channel and connect it. You see, now everything becomes correct. So you need an alpha. If it's reversed, you need to just use a reverse node to get it back, or you can reverse it back in Photoshop. Either way it works. Okay, now instead of that, this is actually the hard way. I just want to show you so you can be flexible with those. The easy way is actually, let me just delete it by pressing that cross button to delete my array layer, and I'm just going to create another file this time, and I'm going to load another texture which is also the array, but this time this array is actually with alpha. Okay, just open it and then drag this into my list. It will be on the bottom, so I need to drag this one, the new one, to the front. Now you see we're actually having the right result. The reason for that is because I need to change the gamma correction. The reason for that is because if you're using a texture that actually have alpha, Maya can actually recognize it. You see the out color goes to color, and the alpha also goes to the alpha. So if you have a texture, no matter it's a PNG or TG or any other tab, if they have alpha, you don't have to do this. Okay, you just need to have a texture that actually have alpha, and it will be read perfectly. Okay, great. Now this is the layer texture. I just want you to know that inside of it there is an alpha channel. You can actually use other things for the alpha, not limited to use the alpha of the texture itself. And you can put multiple layers, so we can drag another one if you want to, which I'm not going to do that, but you can just create a new texture and drag it in there, and maybe move it to the front and create a rust or anything else like that. So this is layer texture. Now I have another cube here. So let me just move to the other side. I have a bigger cube. On this cube, I'm going to use layered material. Let me just drag those things up. Again, I'm going to create a new vray material and drag it to the cube, and then load another texture. This time I'm going to just load a brick texture. Open it. It looks like this. The reason for that is because I need gamma correction. Okay, and then I also need to refresh the render. Great. Now it seems like a little bit too big, so I'm going to select the place 2D texture node and repeat it, for example, twice, just to make it look nicer. Okay, that looks fun. I'm going to create another material. Oh, actually I want to have a bump map there. Just drag the texture as the bump map. No big deal. Or you can just go to Crazy Bump or Quixel to convert that into normal map, which in my opinion doesn't really make that much difference anyways. I'm just going to use this as the bump map, and it should be negative because the white color is supposed to be go in. Okay, great. Now let me just create another vray material, and this one, let me name it. This one will be a wall material. The second one will be tile material. I'm going to create a tile on top of the bricks. So I'm going to load a texture for my tile material. This texture will be tile. Let me just previously create my texture input gamma to gamma correct it, and I'm going to load my tile. Okay, this is also a texture with alpha. Very simple. Now if you drag this one to the wall, you can see the wall now is having a texture like this. It has an alpha. It's just not connected for now. Okay. Now I'm going to combine those two materials together. So I'm going to create a vray blend material, and then drag my vray blend material to the cube. Because now nothing is on this blend material, so it's completely transparent. I'm going to drag my wall material into the base material of my blend material. Now the wall will be shown there, and then I'm going to drag my tile material on the code material 0. Now you see the result is actually those two are blending together, and kind of like they're both half transparent. The reason for that is because the blend amount for code material 01 is in the middle, which is 0.5. So that means the tile material is actually 0.5 transparent, and it's showing the wall material underneath it. So I'm going to change that. Unfortunately, I have my file that have a alpha. You see, if you take a look at from here, you see this tile is actually transparent, even though it's not showing in the result here, but it has an alpha. So I'm going to use this alpha as the blend amount 0, which is this one. I have to open it because it has 3 channels. I'm going to use the alt alpha of my tile texture as both R, G, and B, all 3 of them. Now the result is, you can see that now the tile is completely on top of the brick. Because of that alpha, the tile is perfectly cut it out, and the brick is perfectly being blocked by the tile. Okay, now you may ask why we need this, because we can achieve the same thing using layered texture, right? Now the reason we use this is because you see the tile is actually more reflective than the brick. Now you cannot achieve that by blending textures, because even you blending textures, you can only have one reflectivity on this single material. But if you have 2 materials, then you can change the material of the tile without actually affecting the area where the wall is, right, where the brick is. So I'm going to select my tile material and go to reflection and turn that all the way up. Now you see, we can only see the tile is actually becoming a little bit more reflective. Now great. I can go to the for now, just uncheck that and make it 2, just to make things look more clear. Still not that easy to see, but you can see the other side, right? The tile now is more reflective. It's better to have a normal map, so I already have one. So I'm going to load that normal map. By the way, that normal map is created using Quixel. I'm going to load my normal map. You see the reflection there, right? I'm going to load my tile normal map. Just open it. Okay, with the normal map, I'm also going to change the glossiness of my reflection, just to have the specularity more easier to see. I can see we're actually having a more reflective tile, but the break remains their default value, so it's not reflective at all. Okay. Now one more thing here. You see, even we have them blocked, it still feels like a flat plane, right? So I'm going to try to extrude out my tile a little bit more than this. The way to do that is another material called vray bump. Let me just create a vray bump, and then I'm going to drag my vray bump on top of the cube. Now nothing is appeared because we have no base material on the vray bump. I'm going to drag my vray blend material to the base material. Okay, and then the bump amount, I can actually use the alpha on my tile texture. So I'm going to drag the alpha as the bump map, both R, G, and B. Okay, now I'm going to make it really big, maybe 3, just to make things much easier to see. You can see the tile now are bumping out even more, right? You can see there's clearly a thickness there. So sometimes this is really useful to make your surface looks more realistic with very, very complex details and variations. Okay, now that's layered material. Okay, the last thing I want to introduce here is a little bit tricky, and you're probably not going to really need it if you're doing realistic render, but this can come in really handy when you're doing stylized. Let me do that on this simple one, so it makes things easier for me, which is you can actually using a node called surface luminance to change how the faces that is directly being lit looks like without affecting the faces that is not being lit directly. So let's create that node. It's called surface luminance. Okay, and then you need to have 2 color correction nodes. Remap HSV 1 duplicated. Where is it? It's actually here. So remap 2. I'm going to use the layer texture and drag it into the remap HSV 1 and also in remap HSV 2. So I have 2 color corrections, and then I need a color blender or blend colors. Now if you drag the blend colors into the diffuse of my cube material, you can see it actually turns purple. Now the reason it turns purple is because it's blending those 2 colors listed here, the red one and the blue one, and the blend ratio is 0.5, so it's purple. Now I'm going to use surface luminance to change that. Now vray cannot read this very well according to my experience, so I need to convert that into another thing. You can use anything to convert them. I'm just going to use remap again. This time I'm going to use remap value because it has only 1 value. I'm going to drag the surface luminance to the input value, and then look carefully. I'm going to use the out value of my remap. I don't change anything here. I'm just use this node to transfer the information here into a readable value for my blend color. Just use the out value into Blender. Now you can see the result is pretty nice, right? The face that is being lit are now red, and the face is not being lit are now blue. If I change the red color here, for example, change that to a yellow one, you can see only the front part is being changed into yellow. The back part is exactly like what it had before, right? The reason for that is surface illumination gives the information, and the wet area, the area that is being lit by the light, is having a value of 1, and the faces that is not being lit directly, even it has receiving some it's receiving some indirect lighting, but if it's not being lit directly, then it will be showing it will be having a value of 0. So in this case, this is actually the mask for the leaded and unleaded areas. Okay, now you need a remap value to make things work properly. Great. Now, instead of using only red and blue, I'm going to use those two remapping things from my layer texture and drag them into those slots. So 2 slots here. Okay. Now the reason I need 2 is I can actually change them individually. Now I can make maybe the front, maybe the areas that is being leaded a little bit more brighter, right? I can drag this up. You see only the front part is being brighter. I can make it darker or do anything I want with it, right? And it's not affecting the back area at all. And sometimes it's becoming really handy even when you're doing realistic stuff. Even now this is actually not physically correct, but you can change those if you don't really like the actual correct results, because sometimes it's not about physically correct, it's more about artistically better. So I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, and I'm going to make my back, oh that's too much, maybe just keep it the default value, but for the dark side I'm going to make it a little bit desaturated, so I'm going to bring down the saturation. It will feel cooler, right? And to make it even more cooler, I can change the color and change the hue to make it cooler. So you see I'm having very strong very strong warm and cold color contrast, even though it's not realistic, but you can see the power of this thing, right? I'm going to change the my front color to be more warm, so I'm going to make it warmer. Maybe that's too much, but you see what I'm doing, right? Maybe a little bit more saturated. Okay, great. So this is everything I have introduced in the last class. I hope you guys can use the techniques to make your render more appealing and make your surface looks more complicated. Okay, thanks for watching.